Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 6, season 2, episode 6, or episode almost 40 now, gentlemen. We're getting up there in the numbers, but hey, whatever. I'm your host with the most, with my co-hosts of the most as well. I am Alex, otherwise known as Lexi by MaskedSwan on the internet. The man in the middle is the brilliant man himself. Initia1ise, welcome to the show, sir.
Glad to be here. Double episode this week, so excited to get some more thoughts out there.
It is a bit spicy. We've got content to bring you lovely listeners out there, but we wouldn't be able to do it without the Supreme Man himself going Super Saiyan 10 or something crazy. It's Nymaera on the other side.
Yeah, I'm Super Saiyan. Well, my hair's brown. So that doesn't really sound as cool as all.
Completely rotated around. You fully powered up.
That's the one. Yeah. Actually, it's like the old game Asteroids, where like you go off one end and you come on the other. Like I've basically gone so far around the power chart. I've like reset back to like my regular appearance, and I'm in it, dude. I'm here for it.
Awesome, great to hear. And how far are you in it? Because what is this podcast?
This podcast is the LJL OU podcast, which is where we get together, we have a couple of thoughts, and those thoughts are particularly around League of Legends within Japan. And that includes the LJL, which is their professional league, and stuff which might affect it, which is kind of more relevant for today's episode.
Very much. It is something special around this week's episode, bringing a special one, but obviously before we get into any of that, Initia1ise, sir, do we have any affiliation with Riot Games or anything, or are we just a fan-done podcast or whatever?
Sadly for us, it is very much the latter. This is all off our own back. There is no association with Riot whatsoever, but that does give us a little bit more freedom to do the things we like, the way we like. So, hey, goes in roundabouts.
I can't complain in the grand scale of things. These views are all of our own and also do not represent our broadcast, the LJLOU. We just happen to use the same name because branding people, you got to try and climb up somehow. Anyway, you can check out all of our social medias at MaskedSwan, at Initia1ise with a 1, and at Nymaera. You can also find the LJLOU's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Discord. There we go. That's the final one, where you can get in contact with all of us as well as join our lovely community in the Discord server. Links, as always, will be in the description or the show notes, and you can catch this podcast on all audio streaming platforms. Gentlemen, this is a podcast where we've got clickbait underneath our title. We've got clickbait in the thumbnail. People know what we're talking about this week. Superweek. It's the most important thing of all. No, okay. We've got 2 topics for this week, ladies and gentlemen. This is our Superweek Hype Week talk video. We're going to be kind of bringing up the points for Superweek. We're excited for it. It's honestly, outside of finals, arguably the most special time of the LJL in the split, because you get 16 games across 1 weekend. It's truly the most unique part. But obviously, okay, the main topic of this podcast is going to be around the import rule and it changing. We're going to be tackling the question coming from more of a minor region perspective, but also just as fans of each of the major regions as well. We each have our pockets, we each have our thoughts and opinions, and we wanted to kind of have a conversation around the LJL.
Yeah, so we're gonna try and like lay out effectively, because of course we don't know the likelihood of what outcomes are going to be with discussions about the import rule. We figured we'd go down a couple of different avenues and say, if this happens, what does it mean? If this happens, what does it mean? And try and cover a wide enough kind of approach, I suppose, that you kind of get something out of this from our perspective.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of talks around that. I mean, It's Primal on Hotline League was talking about how obviously a problem that they were having is that it's not being the conversation happening isn't very nuanced, and at the same time, it's only being talked about in NA, which I guarantee you, ladies and gentlemen, we are not going to be doing or spending much time on NA in our conversation, by the way. We will be referencing, obviously, the teams and the LCS, but it's going to be as a footnote, really. It's not the most important thing to us. But gentlemen, with being our main topic, we do have our first topic to go through, and that is Superweek, guys. We gotta get hyped for Superweek. It's exciting. Anyone that is interested in only here for our import, we understand. We won't take it as disrespect. Show notes and times in the below. If you're listening to the audio version, you will be able to just tamp right across. So
okay,
don't
see
worry.
You in a handful of seconds, but actually 30 minutes later.
And we'll probably say welcome again. But gentlemen, Superweek is almost upon us. We've been getting prepared, getting ready for these 16 games. All of our games should, in theory, now be out on our YouTube channel in case you want to catch up on all the action and everything else. And on Friday, we will be having a Superweek stream on Friday, with all 8 of our games of Friday's coverage being streamed live because we had to take a week off. So don't worry, we're going to be doing 3 days, bringing actually 24 games to you. 8 of them are all Blast from the Past recording. You can actually check them out on our YouTube channel whenever you wanted. But hey, the stream for the background if you've got 8 hours to chill in the morning when we would normally go live. 9 o'clock, remember, be there or don't be there. We won't technically be there. We might be asleep, probably. Superweek, gentlemen. There are a lot of games happening, and we could arguably be like, oh, I'm excited for this game. And each game is going to be very unique. Obviously, we'll have our pre-show where we'll go into a bit of depth around these 2 teams and each time, but it's far too much time for us to do on the podcast. Let's actually talk about 5 games that we've picked out and go through them. And I think the first game that we should really begin off with is going to actually be Detonation Focus Me facing against Rascal Jester, our number 1 seed facing off against our number 3 seed. And who wants to take this first? Oh, I saw the eyebrows go. No, initially.
I saw Nymaera's eyebrows go too. Go on, man. Go on, buddy.
Go on, initially. Go on, Nymaera. Go on.
Oh, what? Okay, right. It's coming to me. Well, so why is Superweek really fun? Why are we going to enjoy it? Because effectively, there are only 3 game days left, 2 of which are happening back to back this weekend. It's breakneck, and you really have to be well practiced in your stuff. I think it was last split we had a lot of opinions about, for instance, Sengoku, DFM, Crest Gaming Act coming into that Super Week, and there were some real big moves from these teams who we considered, top of the table or more middle of the table, and things went, either very well or very badly. I look at DFM, I look at Rascal Jester, and I think this could potentially be like an upper bracket into finals matchup where things have to come out some way in the Super Week, because again, we're only like 1 game between DFM and V3, 1 game between V3 and Rascal Jester. Things go badly enough for V3 and DFM in the Super Week, suddenly Rascal Jester can use this as an absolute like step on the head, push them down and climb up the ladder a bit more moment. And we know that Rascal Jesters are a good team. They've shown their mettle, and DFM are not infallible. They're not infallible. So this will be a real chance to see that, much like in last year too, when we saw like, can a team beat V3 in summer, can a team beat DFM in spring? This feels like exactly the same kind of moment in terms of like, can Rascal Jester prove themselves to be, title contenders?
Yeah, and to kind of buy onto that, because of how the game days work, you've got 2 games one day, 2 games the next day. There is very, very, very little room for take it to adjust, right? You've had that week off to set yourselves up, but because you don't have a lot of time to set up, effectively your preparation time, your 2 weeks off, have to be very, very good. So you've got that your coaching staff has to be really on it. DFM historically have been very good at taking that break and doing something with it. They've done it coming into playoffs a number of times. They've done it coming into splits. This is a time when they tend to come alive. It certainly helped, say, last summer when they were really off the boil at the beginning of summer, weren't connecting in the ways we were expecting, were halfway down the table. It was looking really rough for them. They come into Super Week and look a lot better. And so for some of these teams with established player bases, systems to improve, to read the meta, to practice, to get a lot out of your practice, that's great. Rascal Jesters are a new team. They've got a lot of veterans on there, but they've also got, like, say, Kinatu, who is very much a rookie. And this is a world where potentially either that really works for them, but if they don't quite get the right read, and they come in and they've got a few tough matches this week to the Rascal Jesters. There's some really big ticket matches they've got. Of course, we mentioned the one versus DFM. Who else are they playing that week? They've got Burning Call's not so much of a big deal, but if I remember on the Sunday as well, they've got V3. They've got V3 on Sunday. Like, that's the other 2 top teams. Like, I have a lot of faith in the Jesters. I think they've done a great job. That said, that is V3 and DFM, who are very good at preparing and practicing. This could be a bit of a week where Jesters really stumble too, because there's not going to be a lot of room to adjust.
Yeah, there's a lot of options. Let's actually zoom over to our next match. That's going to be Sengoku Gaming versus V3 in the schedule. And this is honestly a match where it's the 2nd place versus 4th place. And I think fair to say, before week 4 happened, gentlemen, we would have just assumed V3 will just smash them. They should just smash them. But might not be the case anymore.
Nope.
No. So, this is a bit of an interesting one because Sengoku Gaming have finally turned online. They had a crap start to the split, but a lot of analysts had particularly over in Japan,
that's putting it very lightly.
Had a lot of faith in this squad, had a lot of faith in this organization, and they seem to have finally kind of got it together. They got a win over DFM, offering them their first loss, which is good. Crash has had some good games. Gango and Enti looking pretty strong. Ramune seems to have found some picks and a way to play with this squad, even if it's not necessarily him being the main carry, is at least not being a problem. So that's all good news. But V3, I think, have also been really, really strong. At least this time, we might see another game, because V3 have dropped a couple games, where potentially it's at least somebody else to challenge V3, and it's not just DFM and V3 running over the league.
So what I'll say about this match in particular, I think actually, looking at these rosters and how they're performing right now, we could kind of actually have quite a well-balanced map in terms of the way we saw Sengoku beat DFM was crushing bot lane. I think that with NC and Gango both being online versus Hollow and Reiner, that is going to be such a barnstorm at 2v2. Now, you look at like, well, okay, you've got like Ace and Ramune in that mid lane. Maybe less about the initial playmaking themselves. I think that you look at Crash and Mujin, both on form, actually going to do a lot of similar things too in terms of their aggressive play. I think the one thing where it might get a bit unbalanced is where we've got Paz versus Cogcog in the top lane, because Cogcog has genuinely been maybe the best top player in the LJL this split so far. He's definitely been one to watch either way. I look at this and I think, actually, this is a real good butting of heads. This is very much people coming in on the right form at the right time to make this a really good match.
I think this is easily, outside of maybe DFM Rascal Jester, this might also be play of the game of the day. Like this is up there with Rascal Jester. Like
and
for me,
blessed to have them both in the same day.
Exactly, right? And it opposite ends of the day as well. So you've got the morning stuff happening there, and then you got still stuff happening in the evening. You don't kind of miss out completely on this system. Like it's definitely setting itself up to be an exciting day. I mean, I'm very much interested also to see is this the return of Ramune. It's going to come in a lot later, far later actually in question time when I get to really talk about this man for a point. But Ramune is starting to maybe come back into the LJL, like actually showing some of the flair that he was once the king of, really, in the mid lane. But Ace is quietly just going, hey, I don't actually have to play the typical mid laner role that has historically been successful in the LJL. I can do my own thing. I can kind of take a book out of Siros's play and go, I'm going to do whatever I want to do, and I'm going to just do it really well. And if my team plays around it, we win. And they got to Worlds doing that, and he looks even better than when he went to Worlds.
Look, if you give Ace playmaking tools in team fights, he tends to be an excellent player.
Just don't have him farm.
Yeah, I mean, even then, I don't think his stats have actually been that bad this split, interestingly. But I have been doing a little bit of backroom stuff, and I do think this will be a bit of a trial by fire, particularly for Hollow, actually, because Gango and Enti have been incredibly lane dominant. Gango has the highest CS difference at 15. He has the highest XP difference at 15. Hollow is only just ahead of Yuhi at the bottom of the table in both of those stats. He has had very poor CSD and XP differences at 15.
Well, that's partly because obviously Reiner leaves the lane, and it's he's kind of left in 2v1 a lot of the time, so he can't farm effectively.
Absolutely,
right?
My point being that stylistic difference, and it's a rookie coming in, and yes, he's doing great things in mid-game team fights and staying alive and getting some good kill involvement and stuff, and that's been great for V3. And obviously, he's passed the eye test. There has been some points in lane where potentially he has been punishable, particularly by the guys of Gango and Enti, who index so hard into winning lane. So, I'll be interested to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I think that bot lane is going to be really huge, because I think that, well, you might say that about Hollow-san, but I also think that he's probably the most gold-efficient bot laner in the league. If you say that, you think, actually, Hollow's not really getting resources from the laning phase. What he manages to achieve after that point has meant that, actually, he's pulling his weight proportionally more than the other bot laners of that same caliber, right? And that also allows players like Cogcog to get ahead, because Mujin's actually been up there more often than not. And as we've said, Cogcog has looked very, very good. The question is, can you afford, well, much like last year when we saw, like, Gango and NC on CGA do, Gango and Grendel on CGA do crazy things when they were ahead in lane. Can you afford to leave this bot lane alone on an island, or do you need to, I'm expecting Kalista bans, put it that way. I think that Gango can't be allowed to have that champion. But can you afford to leave the spotlight on an island? Because I think that's where this game falls apart for V3 and succeeds for Sengoku.
Potentially.
I'd like to just move on to the next game, Sam, if that's okay, because we're still going to be talking about V3 for this one, and I actually think for point of purpose is V3 facing off against Rascal Jester. It is a day 2 game. The only 2 games from that we're actually going to be bringing up, but that's because, ladies and gentlemen, some of these lower pack of the teams, we need to also mention they have got important matches happening there, and we want to cover each of those aspects. V3 facing off against the Jesters, gentlemen. This is going to be a part of the series part of the week where we get to go, okay, what is the direction? What is the future, really, that we're expecting that these teams to go? This is 3rd and 2nd place. This is probably also going to be deciding who gets the upper bracket spot, unless catastrophic things happen in week 7, or obviously picking up a loss at the end of the day and then losing another 2 games outside of crazy situations like that happening, which we don't expect.
Happened to CJ last player.
This could define it.
CGA, remember, going into the last week, went 0-2, and that's the thing. Sometimes you flip the coin and it comes up with a pile of poop on it.
Yeah. As I said, preparation, man. You can be coming in super hot, and if people spend that time figuring you out, and you just get wrong-footed, because I think there's a patch change that'll have come through this as well. Like, this could be big stuff.
Well, and I think with this match, I remember when we had the first matchup of it, I thought, well, how do you describe Rascal Jester and V3's playstyle? I described V3 as Rascal Jester plus, and then Rascal Jester beat them in that matchup, and I'm like, well, maybe actually V3 is maybe not the big brother in this matchup.
I'll say... Sorry, Lexi, go on.
No, go for it. I'll remember what I said.
I'll be interested to see how the top 2v2 goes, because Cog has been putting up some monster numbers. Like, he has been such a hard carry for V3 in a way that none of us expected. But like, the guy's champion pool, his DPM, his goal difference, like all of his stats look phenomenal, and he's looked very good in game 2 on a lot of different champions. And Kinatu, on the other hand, has been a really pleasant surprise in the top lane as far as a rookie goes. Like, his flanks have been really on it. He's played strong side when Hachimecha has come up there. The Kane Aatrox game, probably most prominent in our minds for that one, where the 2 of them really put Appamen under the bus. But he's also played weak side okay, especially after a rough couple games. He's kind of learned to play that okay, but he has got a couple very tough matchups this week. Cog in this one. Ebby will be in the DFM match as well. And I will be interested, especially because V3 have often indexed into playing more towards their top side than towards their bottom side, at least early on into the game. How the Jesters plan to deal with it. Will they just leave Kinatu weak side and focus bot because they've got the talent down there to at least compete? Or do they try and shield Kinatu a bit, because Mujin and Cog is a pretty scary top 2v2.
Well, he survived it last time.
Yeah, he did.
Let's be real. This is for Rascal Jesters. This is the first time they're actually going to be challenged in the bot lane. Like, I'm sorry, every other support hasn't really matched up to the expectations. We don't have Gang currently in the LJL. Proud has been honestly an elo hell with Ray Farkey at the moment. So bless him. Corporal hasn't been able to set up because Zenit isn't really there, and the Hawks are just in a weird place. And honestly, I think NT is kind of fine. And we already know my thoughts on Alchemy, and Axis's bot lane obviously is a rookie bot lane with Honey trying to pull all the time. I actually think this will be trial by fire for Soul and Secret. I'm really interested to see what happens when they have a support player who will push back. Reiner is the best support player in my eyes in the LJL at the moment, and I don't think that's real. There's much contention for that at the moment. Kazu is just kind of floating on being on the best team. He's not bad, but if you slotted him into the other teams, his problems would start to become far more noticeable. Utapon is the best AD carry also, by the way, in my opinion, because that man's basically playing 2v1. Like it's kind of unreal. I've made this meme before, but I'm that's where I'm actually more interested. I actually think the bot lane is going to be so interesting because Soul and Secret will get pushed back. We've seen other bot lanes give them issues, but normally that's been from junglers. This is not going to be a 2v2 where there's like, who's actually the better 2v2? And I think your points about Hollow earlier, Initia1ise, might become true.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I still have some nerves for Kinatu, because, I mean, last time, if you remember, it was Cog put Kinatu in a dumpster, and he came back in the team fights, but it was on the Narf for Cog, and he never really got it rolling past that laning phase. And, like, considering where the draft ended up, Rascal Jesters played that Skarner Thresh super, super well. I want to see whether Rascal Jesters have another draft up their sleeve like they did the last time, or whether V3 can sort of try the same game plan but be a little bit more prepared for the curveballs the Jesters like to throw in.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Bless you. You must have missed part of what I said because I was talking about the bot lane of the Jesters.
Sorry,
not
yes,
the
I was.
top
I
lane,
had.
yes, Kanatu.
I had a stat block. I had a stat block up that I was like trying to figure out what was going on.
It's all right. I just was going to be
so
like,
sorry, dude. Yeah.
Okay. Let's move over to our next two teams. Completely different teams we haven't actually mentioned at all here. This is going to be Axis facing off against the Hawks. Now, ladies and gentlemen out there might be like, why are you picking this match? This isn't one of the big matches. Actually, for these teams, this is an important match to win both sides. For the Hawks, they're currently at the bottom, tied for 7th at the moment, not looking so good, though maybe there's some options for them moving forward. But this is their big match, because for Axis, they lost against Burning Core. That is not a good place. That was an expected win, not only from the three of us, but also pretty much everyone. They weren't expecting Burning Core to turn up. Burning Core turned up. We'll talk about Burning Core in our next match. Axis look very hot and cold, gentlemen.
Yeah, I mean, this is the squad with the most rookies. Inno, Megamin, Nemo, all rookies, and that's rookies in every position, like a spread across the map, right?
Yeah.
And we've seen really good things from kind of a number of them. Inno's had some good team fightings. I remember his Gragas game that kind of slapped Apperman around. Well, not in lane, but came down and was just quicker to the team fights. Megamin had that Silas game that we all rave on about. But we've also seen that other side of the coin where when things start going badly for these rookies, it's a rookie phenomenon where you don't necessarily know how to staunch the bleeding as well in a competitive game where
it just goes downhill immediately.
Yeah, exactly. If you die a couple of times, it snowballs out of there. And we've seen it from Nemo in particular. There was that Nautilus game where I think he went 0, 8, and 6.
Oh, that was a draft thing too. Like, I don't want to. I know it's relevant, but also remember that was like trying to kill a Senna Azir through a Scion. Like, what do you do? There's a certain point where it's not feasible to have a good KGA in that game.
No, absolutely. But even then, there is a thing where, like, actually, if your draft makes things difficult and you're having a difficult game, it compounds even harder when you're a rookie, because, like, that's still a lot of deaths and not a lot of gain out of it, even if it's tough. And like, yes, it's hard,
Sam, there's the comparison between, we've got rookies here for Axis, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Hawks have got vets.
Oh, yeah.
These are veterans, right? And, like, the vets haven't turned up. So clearly it's still working for the rookies, even when they are losing.
Right. And I think that's, for me, that's the other side of Axis, right? Was when they do pop off, these rookies are really happy to run with things. Plus, they've got Honey, who has been putting up ridiculous numbers.
Honey's been
so good. And Hoglet as well has had some...
Hashtag not biased.
Yeah. And Hoglet's actually been doing a really good job of things like vision control, actually, interestingly, when I've been looking over
Except for last week.
Yeah, except for last week. But he's done a really good job of, like, getting control over spaces. Whereas my problem with the Hawks has actually been, like, Dasher and Zenit have got really good leads out of lane, and then not managed to take those leads and convert them in team fights, like, consistently at all. Which has been kind of the other option, where I think Honey has been a really dangerous point of pressure, however the game is going, which I can't say about the Hawks carries right now.
I mean, Nymaera, what's your thoughts about the Hawks?
I think that a lot of it, I know that we've kind of ended up defending Tussle at some points. I think it's so hard to play around a failing jungle support combo right now, because even though AD carries have so much weight of carrying put on them, they do need a structure to play around, and Corporal has struggled in lane and struggled in team fights too, and I think and that's not all individual play, right? Though, because particularly at the pro level, I look at when his pro is struggling that we know has been good. Corporal was arguably our 3rd or 4th best support last year, as an entirety, and to see that he's not bringing out the same performances, even though he's trying to go out to the same picks, like, to me that's more of a communication / systematic thing. What's actually happening? I look at Tussle, and he is not really making the plays that his team need to stabilize, like, mid games particularly. Their early games have been all right. Their laning phases have been decent. Yeah. It just feels like you get to a certain point and Tussle and Corporal are disconnected on what they're looking for, and that means that everyone is trying to do their own thing kind of at the most awkward of times, and that's not really worked out for them.
Yeah. So our last match, because let's just zoom through these, because I want to get onto our expectations for some of these matches. I want to get our hot takes and everything. Give people then predictions if they're part of our Discord, so they can get the hot tech on the direction that we're thinking and going, and they can give their counterpoints. Gentlemen, Burning Core facing off against Crest Gaming Act. These are the final two teams we haven't talked about yet, but we definitely need to mention. Burning Core, obviously, shot at redemption. They finally got a win over Axis, and it was a convincing win. In all credit to them, Axis might have ran it down, but they still did the work. They got onto the rift. They played it out as expected, really. So, well done. You did what you were meant to do. I'll give you a kosher golf clap, and then that's all I'll give you. But for CGA, like a one clap, not even a golf clap. Oh dear, not worth it. No, all right.
Nah, not really.
Russia
didn't clap.
Crest Gaming Act, obviously, they look just like Axis. Last week wasn't good. They look slightly better than the CGA, who had the same opponents, but not much better than what they had last time around. Obviously, last week we saw Crest Gaming Act facing off the exact same opponents that the Hawks did. But the Hawks looked slightly worse, and Crest Gaming Act looked slightly better, but we're pulling literal hairs here, gentlemen. Crest Gaming Act facing off against Burning Core. I almost expect this to be a bit of a bang or a whimper of a game.
Two most inconsistent teams in the LJL.
Yeah.
Right?
Because I look at both these teams and I look at CGA's schedule and they've got, let's have a look, see, they've got what they've got. Actually, you know what, do you want me to bring up the schedule? I can bring that up on screen. I probably should.
Sure, bring it up.
You know what, I really should have done this. This
Hello,
is something I could have
you're now
done all
below
along.
me. Hello.
What's up? How's it going, upstairs neighbor?
It's
See my real life upstairs neighbors, like right, they have like DJ sets until like 2 a.m. in the morning, and it means I'm very low sleep a lot of the time. Anyway, right.
Oh.
I look at CGN, they've got what? Hawks, V3, DFMC, and then Burning Core. And I look at this and I'm like, there's a chance they go like they're the kind of team I wouldn't put it past them to somehow to a V3 DFM and then lose to like Hawks, Burning Core. That's kind of the feeling I get. Anyway, I don't expect... That's a low chance. But I look at, like, Burning Core CJ, and both of these teams are so all over the place. I actually think this comes down to the top lane matchup. I know, Sam, you've got some really cool stats about, like, Nap in particular. And then, of course, we all love Ray Farkey on this podcast, too.
Yeah. I mean, I was looking over Nap, and basically, Cassin has played top side nearly, like, permanently. He's been with Nation and Nap every game they've played, basically. And that's been for better or for worse. We've seen what Cassin's done with the lead. We've also seen when he tries to int under tower and go down on Jin Zhao and the likes. Like, this guy doesn't really have a brake pedal. And it's been an interesting one to watch. And sometimes it's been good. And he's paired up pretty well with Nap alongside Nation. And Nap has really good stats in terms of He's got highest CSD. Hang on, let me pull that across, make sure I've got that correct. He's got highest he's got the highest CS goal differences at top line. He's the highest. He's 636 goal difference at 15. He's got the highest CSD at 15 of 11. Like, there's good stats here for Nap, even if he's not necessarily on carries all that often. He's often on things like the Gragas or
He's
the
played a couple of
Renekton,
Camille games, but
yeah, I think he's had 2 Camille games, 1 win, 1 loss. I think is my memory of it. So he's been like, they've definitely been playing into the CC and getting things going in that game. The problem is that then Nap has basically been big tanky frontline and initiator rather than necessarily like a team fight carry, which is all well and good. And there's good things.
His Renekton is really good in team fights.
His Renekton is really good. Exactly. And even things like when they've won the Gragas going in for the flash engages, but it's not necessarily like for example, his DPM stats are actually very low. And his damage percentage is one of the lowest in top lane. So like he's been, not that I don't think he's been doing well, it's just not necessarily been from I am going to carry you damage wise, I'm going to carry you from initiation and frustrating the backline, which is a very important thing to be doing as well, but it's not quite the same. And then obviously that is also after you've invested quite a lot in the top lane, so there does come some questions about, well, what is that leaving you without? That has often been Alchemy and Milan on the other side struggling quite a lot, partly because sometimes there's been some problems in lane off themselves, but partly because they don't get any jungle attention, like, at all, really.
No, they don't. And like they do kind of just find themselves in a weird spot. I mean, like Burning Core on the opposite side though, sometimes they just look like we get moments where we almost see Summer Burning Core, right? Like it does feel like we get those moments. It's just what is the problem with Burning Core, guys? Like that's the bigger issue for me.
You got something on this, Sam?
Man.
I mean, I'm just saying an idea, like a point, right? Like we expected high things coming into this team, and they've just been completely off of it. We might never know, honestly. It's just something. It's just an observation, really.
I think there has been some issues with Gariaru not being as much of an upgrade as they would be hoping. Like he's been relative. He's had some okay stats, but like he's definitely not had a lot of lane pressure, and like things like his damage numbers haven't been what they're looking for either. In fact, he's got the lowest damage numbers of any mid laner in the league. Like, he's 371 DPM as a mid laner. Next lowest is Megamin at 400. And they compare that to Nation way at the top at 537.
Funnily enough, you mentioned Megamin. I think actually both of these mid laners should be put on Azir duty a lot more because I think their teams are struggling to play through stuff like Orianna a lot of the time.
It's so bad.
I think you say that, and then you have a couple of games where you actually get to Shurima shuffle the enemy mid laner and be like, yeah, okay, cool, have fun. But like I think some of these teams are like struggling to play around Orianna, and Victor is not quite as OP as they were in the spring last split when the team
need the Syndra either. So
but I will also say that Burning Core in general have just had very low DPM numbers. Like even so, Gariaru's got pretty middling damage share numbers, for example. And I think that's part of the problem is that Burning Core have tried things in the early game, and when they've gone wrong, their team has collapsed and not really found much response to plays, and like as a result, they're often like bleeding out really fast. So I the one that comes to mind most prominently is that game versus DFM where Ebby gets a solo kill, once goes to try and turn it around, Ebby gets out, Steel catches him going to his Krugs on the retreat because he takes so long to get out. He dies again. Then once goes, I go for the Raptor invade because Gariaru is finally shoved up and I might be able to get something. Gets punished on the Raptor invade. Arya gets another kill, and it's like that's max of bad team communication because partly, bad play and then some bad luck, but then the compounding of issues and then the fact from there's just no proactivity once things have gone wrong is not a good look. I just don't.
But we're expecting CGA to just smash Burning Core, right? If that's all the case, we're expecting them to just smash them, right?
Maybe.
Like from what you just said, indicates like CGA, even if they're playing badly, should still smash them.
Potentially, I think the thing with CGA is that like Nation has been actually has had great stats. However, the games have gone. Like he's been playing well, and that's always a good sign. Whereas I can't say that for Burning Core. Is that if games have gone well, who's actually played well, and you start
Ray Farkey
searching. Yeah, even then you're like, I mean, he's played okay. Yeah, I think that's probably it, isn't it?
Proud's done all right. I think Ray Farkey
Proud's done all right.
And like, because I look at both these teams in this matchup, and I think, okay, yeah, bot lanes are actually both been struggling. Maybe they both kind of see it as a free win versus each other. And we've seen that Milan actually does pretty good if he gets to the team fighting stage. His Zaya's been very, very good at different points. If he actually manages to get out of lane, he's had like 0-2, 0-4 starts, stuff like that, and he's managed to come back into games on stuff like Zaya. On the other side, Yuhi, if he ends up getting something like Senna, and he's safe in the backline, he's good at playing that role too. So I mean, I look at both these bot lanes where often they've kind of fallen apart as a team, and maybe that's actually kind of what's going to even up the playing field for both these teams, and they'll both think actually, we can play around that.
Yeah, they definitely will. But gentlemen, we are coming to the end of our Super Week talk. These are the games that we're expecting. Obviously, though, gentlemen, I now am going to come over to you both and ask, who are you picking to win this match? First things first, Detonation Focus Me facing off against Rascal Jester. Who's winning Initialize first?
DFM.
Okay. Nymaera?
It's got to be DFM.
I mean, it's 3 for 3 on the desk, right? But we're all a little hesitant.
Sure, but if you think about this, like, I would say it's 65-35. I can't even go to like 70-30 and be like, yeah, it's solid DFM win. I'm like, there's a chance that they get rolled in the early game, and actually Rascal Jesters look better in the mid and late game than they've done in the early weeks when actually DFM did manage to snag a win over Rascal Jester.
Yeah.
So like I think all of us put together probably around that. I'd imagine we're all like between that 60 to 70% DFM win mark. I don't think we're gonna go lower than 60%. I'd imagine. I don't think it's close enough for 55.
No, I expect them to win, right? Like in theory.
Oh. And that's our alarm. We're out of time. Oh no.
Oh no. Gosh, I think all of us put together means like we think it's DFM favorite, but not like landslide.
Yeah, I mean, I probably am erring more towards that 70% mark, but I will also say that this isn't necessarily us saying, oh no, DFM or bad. What it is actually we're thinking, oh no, Rascal Jesters are actually pretty good. Because
it's far more Rascal Jester good than DFM bad.
Yeah, exactly. And I think
there are
Jesters
worries
have shown...
there too, right? But
yeah. But like for me as well, I think it's just the Jesters have pulled out some really fun stuff in draft, which could catch any team off guard and then shown they can play with it. Like, who expects a Kane last pick?
I mean, let's just go on the opposite. DFM have been drafting like absolute, like they just don't care, like they're in solo queue. So I mean, we're getting both sides of the coin, gentlemen. I'm gonna flick us over to our next game because we want to get over onto our main other topic of gaming versus V3 esports. And for me, gentlemen, I'm going pretty confidently V3. 1 week from Sengoku having a good week isn't enough for me to change. And we all know my thoughts if you listen to our previous episode of the podcast, episode 5. I basically, the only reason Sengoku beat DFM is just due to the incompetence of DFM drafting or ignorance or arrogance or so many other things.
I think I am going to lean into V3 too. I think they have been the most solid drafters in the LJL so far. And I think that Sengoku won against DFM because they had a way to just crush through bot lane, and Gango is very competent at playing that kind of style. You can only do that with a handful of picks. Well, actually, right now it's basically just the Kalista. Maybe if Poke Varus was the thing, you can start doing that, or Caitlyn. But like, there aren't an ample amount of picks you can do that with. So I'm like, yeah, I think that V3 will have identified that. I think that they are competent. They're the most competent early game team that we have in the LJL. I think Sengoku need that early platform, and they won't have that versus V3. So I think this is actually stylistically kind of an unfortunate matchup for Sengoku, because they're up against a good bot lane with not enough picks to really play the style that they beat DFM with, and also the rest of the map is going to be stable enough. So I think it is quite confident V3 for me.
Now, watch Initia1ise counter you completely.
Yeah, So I actually think I still favor V3, but I think it'll be a slightly different thing, because I think V3 play through topside, and I think Mugen and Cog will have an edge over Paz, who's been okay this split, but not like a complete standout. And then on the other side, I actually expect Gango and NT to continue to put Hollow down in lane, because V3 play strong topside and leave their bot side to weak side, but Hollow has still generally dropped a lot of XP and CS in lane, and Gango and NT have got ridiculous lane stats. So I still think V3 will win, because I think their mid game plays have been stronger. Even so, I'll be interested to see how that stylistic mismatch between Gango and NT being very strong side lane versus Mugen and Cog really playing to lane top side often anyway, depending on how things draft. It's not like we haven't seen things like Cog on Ivern and the likes, but I suspect it will play that way around.
Let's not talk too much about V3 versus Rascal Jester, as that is going to be our match of the week for day number 2. So we'll probably go a bit more in desk on our thoughts truly on that one. We'll probably give you a full 5 to 10 minutes of our thoughts on that, ladies and gentlemen. So don't go anywhere. You'll need to catch that content. But for now, gentlemen, I want your hot takes. V3, who wins? Nymaera, you first, sir. You can't keep pulling a face. You gotta give me an answer now.
I'm actually gonna give it to Rascal Jester. I think that
don't do that.
They're too unstudied. I think that V3 are great at prepping. I think that Rascal Jester are just like, I think they might have a few picks or strategies to slip through the net, and I reckon they might come out with a win.
Right. Initia1ise.
Plus, it'd be the most interesting.
I was going to go for the upset with Jesters there, and I was wondering one of these is going to be an upset. Oh,
both of you go Rascal Jester, and then I'll go the correct guy and go V3.
Okay, yeah, go that way. Yeah, I'll give it to Rascal Jester, because I've been really enjoying their clever draft. Yeah. That said, I can see how V3 play topside with a better champion picks to punish better this time, and it all goes wrong for the Jesters.
Yeah, I love my rookie in the top lane. I love Kinati. We all know I'm all about the scouting grounds, guys, first and foremost, but I'm also about getting a correct prediction, and V3 are going to slap Rascal Jesters. I'm sorry. Ace is also going to be playing a completely different style that Recap is not used to, because he's used to every other mid laner playing a very standard mid lane, and Ace is going to be like, hey, mate, I'm just going to farm this lane and fuck off. You're good with that, right? And he's just like,
every chance
where are
he
you
plays
roaming?
Zoe
What is
and
going on?
Hatchemetra plays Kayn
and
again,
pops
and
off
he just
as well. He can pop off on Zoe. Like Ace.
Well, this is the thing. But then, like, if you play like Zoe, it's like Aatrox Kayn or something like that, and like you actually get closed down. It's a really nasty situation. That's what I'm like.
I trust Ace at the moment. I
Yeah, no,
don't agree with you. The blasphemy to our former world players.
Yeah, he has been playing well.
Yeah, I mean, I will say,
Reiner is on this team, and you guys are like, nah, Jesters.
Yeah, I know exactly. That's exactly
the point. Yeah.
The thing is, there is absolutely a world where they do what they did to Kinatu in lane, and they can't recover from it again. Because last time Kinatu lost first fight, was down 38 CS at 15 minutes, was completely out of the game, and he did a fantastic job of coming back into it.
I thought we said we were going to spend so much time on this game.
Yeah. Anyway,
I mean, I'm just the blasphemy from you both.
I know. This is my upset.
And then you're like, upset. Nah, hot take. All right, well, I'm looking forward to getting it right over both of you and getting more points over you guys' predictions. But I might be the leader by over 6 points now. That's 2 games, lads.
Gosh.
You've got some catch up now. Axis facing the Hawks. I guess it's my turn to go first, and I have no idea where to go with this. I'm gonna go with Megumin. I've got to go with the scouting grounds, but I can also see the Hawks just becoming a phoenix and well and truly slapping Axis down, and it just looking a little bit. Who wants to go next? Neither of you know who you're picking.
I think it's gonna be Axis.
Oh, Nymaera,
I think it is gonna be Axis. I think that. Wait, actually, what time in the schedules are happening? It's the very last match. I think that will give Axis enough time to pick up, get their mojo back between the 4 games. And I think that they will be building more momentum than the Hawks will be with that cut. Well, what's the strength of schedule? V3, Burning Core. All right, and the Hawks have got
I heard that
Sengoku and CJ.
I picked this guy. I picked this match specifically because of it.
Yeah, I think that Axis might learn something from the strength of schedule. Just be like, oh gosh, we got slapped. I just hope they don't get too demoralized. But I think it's gonna be Axis, but I do want the Hawks to do well because I predicted they'd do well at the start of the split, and they really haven't. They have some pieces which are really fun. I think it's gonna be Axis.
In theory, beat Burning Core. If they beat Burning Core, I think they have a chance, right?
So, I think from currently what we've seen, I have to give it to Axis. I think Honey has been much more reliable in the mid and late games as a carry than Dasher and Zenit have. Both Dasher and Zenit have struggled to find deep damage and positioning in team fights. Hawks have also got horrific vision score numbers. Tussle and Corporal, bad numbers, really bad numbers. They're down at first, last or second.
Let's go and watch the V3 game to just see how bad they are at warding at the moment.
It's not good. For all the wards that Tussle is placing, he's top 3rd, the vision score and the vision control numbers are literally dead last. It's very similar for Corporal. I think he's a step above Nemo, who's a rookie support. That's it. That said, that problem is that Hoglet has been taking up the slack that Nemo's been leaving and controlling vision really well. So a mixture between, I think Honey's more reliable, and I really worry about Hawk's vision control around dragons and stuff. Leads me to say Axis. That said, Hawks have a lot of
no.
players,
I'm actually taking that. No.
Time off
Burning Core, Press Gaming Act. That's the match. No. You're not getting to defend the Hawks there. I'm not allowing it. You said Axis. That's where I'm leaving it. Even though people probably heard it regardless. Burning Core, Press Gaming Act. I'm going on it, Sam. You don't get to do it. Our final game also of all of Super Week, gentlemen.
Very last one.
And I don't actually want us to go deep at all into this match because we will have seen so many matches throughout this Super Week. This will be a completely different place than where we are now talking about it. So I just want to know who's winning.
I think it's CGA.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think CGA gain more by having a more even bot lane and not losing a laning phase so hard than Burning Core do. I think that Milan's been a better team fight than Yuhi has. So I think that might be the break point.
We're burning.
Do you concur?
where Burning Core are strong, so are CGA. Where CGA are weak, so are Burning Core. Problem is, I actually think there's a big mismatch between Nation and Galliari right now. And that's the break point, because bot lanes are met, top laners are good, jungles have their moments but can also int. And I just think the big difference is Nahum versus Galliari, and I think Nahum crushes it.
All right, with that, gentlemen, that's 3 for Crest Gaming Act. We do all think the same way, but that doesn't mean necessarily. Well, actually, we do, except for Rascal Just a Burning Core, where you guys, Rascal Just a V3, where you're just like, nah, I think the second seed's gonna lose. I'm like, nah. Sure. I think there are other games which will be upsets that I haven't actually highlighted, but we'll probably talk about all of that on the broadcast. That's why people have to come in and tune into us so they know what our thoughts are on each and every matchup. Obviously, you can catch everything on Twitter and our Twitch channel, which we will be covering live, doing the last 4 games, then the first 4, and then we'll be doing the exact same, running it back on Sunday. Expect to see a few guest casters, as well as maybe a few people in the back end assisting us with bringing a beautiful product to you all. Gentlemen, cut. All right, so now I know whereabouts we are in the timing stamp. Let's go in to hello everybody, welcome for our conversation around the import rule and the changes that we believe as pseudo experts, and I'm doing the air quotations around that so people can quote me out of context completely for it. Let's talk the import rule changing. Now, this conversation obviously was brought up due to Travis Gafford. Thank you, Travis, for bringing this to the community's attention, at least, as a journalist. We appreciate that, especially as one of the 3 of us is a journalist. So, thumbs up to you. Thumbs up to you. Obviously, uncovering the fact that owners in the LCS are talking around trying to pressure Riot into doing a rule change. More information has been coming out over the last few days and weeks. And an interesting topic for at least us to talk about is, we don't necessarily care too much around the conversation around NA if it happens. We're far more interested in what it means for the wider world.
At least not on this podcast.
At least not on this podcast, yes. We're far more interested in the wider world, and obviously specifically minor regions and what could happen to the LJL. Now I get to say my very quick hot take, kind of in essence of Travis and Hotline League, and Mark as well, obviously. The LJL will no longer exist in 2 years if the import rule happens. That's my take. This is my take. I must make that clear. This is MaskedSwan, Alexander Swan, my take on if the import rule was to change with how things have been happening. We're going to go into multiple different ideas and aspects of this, gentlemen, but let's talk at least what it could be, because obviously we've got some interesting memories of LMQ coming into the LCS. Obviously, way back in the day, there was like CLG, both EU and NA's rosters, and I think Curse as well played over in the OGN Masters. Like, those were good times, guys.
Yeah, there were some really fun memories, because it was like, that was a point where we were really screaming for more international competitions and trying to see these teams which Worlds was not as kind of well regulated and set up as it is right now. We didn't have MSI. There was IEM Katowice, and we had the IEM global circuit, which is pretty fun. But we were really clamoring for more international tournaments, and the ability to see like LMQ come over to NA, and then like obviously a couple of Western teams going up to Champions too, was really fun. I just don't think we'll ever have that again, just because of the amount of money that has been put into the scene since that point. This is the most lucrative, the most high revenue esport in the world, across everything, if you include all of its different components. And that means that you're going to have a lot of orgs which are suddenly going to be angling for, what can we do with this roster? Well, a lot of orgs trying to go into different regions and bring in a group of 5 players which are complete imports and see what they can do with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it would be a lot of fun. Like, if we could, it would be great, but I agree. I don't think we're going to be able to ever go back to an era of that. That was also League in its infancy, right, guys? So, it was a very different time and game and player numbers.
Season 3, yeah.
Well, plus, remember that the LCS, EU and NA at the time didn't come through till what, season 3, 4? So, yeah,
probably,
and that was interesting in of itself, because of course that system was so apart from things like CS:GO, particularly StarCraft, before they brought in their own import rules for various reasons, which may prove a little bit of a warning lesson as well. And if you want to change up the system significantly, you do risk undermining all the work you've done to build the system you already have. And yeah, that was one of my major concerns, actually. Is like, actually, do you just undercut the whole point of having your regional leagues in the first place?
Well, that's exactly what we're going to end up talking about, because like, I mean, I know Lexi said, like, in terms of his thoughts on the LJL and what happens if certain changes come through. Well, I mean, like, how many different things do we think might happen? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, like 4 or 5 different outcomes, some of which can like branch off from a different point, right? And effectively, there are a couple of them which lead to the LJL being non-existent or in a much more diminished state. And I mean, obviously, we have to sit here and deliver you a message about this and kind of think, okay, we think this might happen. What would we actually think, though? So, for instance, if you ask me, what would I think if the LJL was removed or diminished or all this other stuff? Would I care? Is it something that you should care about? Well, yeah. We just spent, like, what, 45, 50 minutes talking about how Superweek is really fun. And there's a lot of things to look out for. Just because, you know, a region hasn't had, you know, the major international results of something like Albus Nox Luna or a number of other wildcard teams coming in, like Taipei Assassins or a number of other ones, doesn't mean there isn't value in having regional leagues and having regional storylines. I think that would be very misguided to undercut a lot of these regional leagues and take away a reason for a lot of servers to start growing and start supporting their own leagues.
Yeah, I mean, we've only ever really seen one region be able to go from the minor region to major region kind of slot. Obviously, PCS and LMS is kind of a different thing. That's
Weird,
kind of an
yeah.
evolution of grandfather old systems. VCS has started as a minor region. They now have a main world slot. Like they are now becoming a major region. Part of that is due to player numbers on their server. It's just
second largest competitive server, I think.
Yeah, right.
Pretty
like
massive.
Only China beats them, which is
yeah, only is it the Ionia server or the Demacia server? Well, one of the big ones. Yeah,
I don't know which one, but it's one of those, right?
Yeah.
And the league definitely has competitive pedigree. We know that a lot of those teams are very high up there. They will grind it out. The players are sometimes quietly the best in their role, and then hey, it takes them a few years, break international fame, and then we saw our first Vietnamese player in the world finals, and that's only in my eyes a sign of things to come. Yeah, no, I think it's unreal. Like I think that's only the beginning for Vietnamese players, really.
Yeah, big time.
But gentlemen, let's go on to what we think some of the several outcomes are, as I imagine we'll probably start fleshing out more topics and conversation points as we go through. What happens if nothing changes outside of only the LCS? So these changes that are being talked about around the import rule, getting it unlocked, I guess would be, or removed. What happens if it only happens in the LCS? And do we think that will really affect the LJL? Obviously, sure, one or two of our top players might be poached, or maybe move to Academy, for instance, in that kind of idea that it expands to truly only LCS. What do we think? I don't think it will be a big issue for minor regions, I'll be honest.
I think it potentially hurts the minor regions' import power, in that actually players they might have looked to before may now end up in LCS. But yes, I kind of agree. I think, at least for, say, the LJL, we're a little further down the totem pole for scouting people to effectively look and say, yeah, we'd be interested in that player. Whereas a lot of the ERLs for EU may be a little higher. Turkey's higher. VCS is higher. And then you might start seeing those minor regions suffer a little bit. But
PCS too, right?
PCS, exactly. But the initial eyes go to Korea. They go to potentially the LPL. They potentially go to EU as well, where you go, okay, we've got staff in place to help with Korean training already from years and years of using Korean imports, even if LPL is stepping up a little bit. And EU, most of these countries speak English, and we've already got a lot of success out of players like Jensen, Santorium, Bjergsen, Sven.
CS is already borderline close to that already with the amount of imports in the region.
I mean, Team Liquid's got one Native American. Everyone else, not Native American, so that's a bad phrasing. American resident. There you go. Like, it's probably the way to put it. Apologies there for the misphrasing. But like Santorin and Jensen are both Danish. Alfari's from Wales. Core JJ is Korean. It's just Tactical who is North American.
I mean, let's be real. Only Dig has a non-import team.
Sure.
I mean, and then you've got heck, even like TSM's got 0 North American players. You've got, you've got Speaker, right? You've got Speaker who's like a resident, and then Lost because they were an old OCE import are also on there. So you've got like a lot of teams in here which are already kind of like at capacity. And you think, okay, well, if you unlock like the import rule and you allow these teams to import more, you've got a couple which might start looking for them. But then there's a whole lot of questions in terms of, particularly for NA, what's going to happen with culture changes and stuff like that. There's a reason there are a lot of Koreans in the LJL, and that's because it's relatively similar in terms of a lot of the cultural divides and differences in terms of the cultural stress you might end up undergoing because you don't have your friends and family around you, because it's slightly closer to home, slightly closer to culture, slightly closer in a lot of regards. The money aspect is obviously pretty huge for a lot of these NA orgs though, and then suddenly it does unlock the ability to see what happens if between seasons someone who just does say, I don't know, say if FlyQuest or CLG or I don't know, or another team just fares really poorly and saying, can I just import a full 5-man team from the LPL or Korean Challenge or something like that, bring them in as our roster because there are no import changes and see how they do? Can I just do that?
Rogue Warriors now plays in the LCS.
Because one of the problems with a lot of management of esports in general, I think this became very apparent when we saw a lot of the broadcast staff leaving the Overwatch League, for instance, is that a lot of people in upper management in a lot of esports scenes have no esports history or roots. They're there from traditional sports.
Not many people do.
Not many people do. No, you're right, absolutely. And that's the problem. You've got these senior roles which are very important to fill, but they're not, no one has the history to be relevant on the business side and the esports side. And you've got, and you look at that for people in team ownership and stuff like that, and you'll have their backers saying, well, why can't we just bring in the good players? The really good players. And you're like, well, it's not quite as simple as that. But because this stigma is there in some form or other, and it will happen in different angles too, because a lot of backers will be clamoring for results. You will get a point where this is a likely outcome for certain teams if they're struggling.
Can I jump in on a point you kind of raised there about specifically, like, actually they're trying to fill these big top end, like, senior executive staff. And actually the part of that question was there's not been that many esports people at that point. I'll also raise the point that I don't think that recruitment in these companies actually know what they're looking for. So they put down the wrong requirements, saying, they're looking for the wrong things sometimes. Is my sometimes my way when
that's just the nature of being in an industry that is so young, right?
Yeah.
Like that would be my counterpoint. Like the recruiters don't know how to do their job because this is their first time maybe doing it, right?
Well, yeah, and part of it. So that's definitely. I think also sometimes CEO, like staff and investors want people with requirements and qualifications that they know and understand already, and I think that sometimes. So I actually think sometimes smaller companies sometimes know what they need better than bigger companies who've got in these kind of well-meaning and certainly sort of experienced people from other walks of life, but don't necessarily have the same read on what you need for this situation because it's such a new thing. And so while I agree, yes, not that many people who've got an esports background, I also sometimes think you're not looking in the right places to find people who, even if you don't, have at least got the right mindset for some of this stuff.
Yeah, and I think obviously that is the knock-on effect of the import rule because people are coming into these conversations and they're thinking one thing, and then if you're maybe a newer owner to a team, you're part of this 1 of 10 owners and you're not a Jack, right? You're not someone that has been in the industry since really it began as a league. You don't kind of have that perspective of going, I remember what it was like when it was a completely different thing. I've seen the changes, and now Jack is arguably leading the charge from what at least interviews I've seen when they were doing the press conferences. Jack was like, I hate the import rule.
He was most outspoken about it.
Yeah. But he was also very transparent.
Well.
He was like, I want it completely changed and redeveloped. Like he thinks there needs to be a heavy focus on academy and the like. And I think that's worthwhile.
No, and so
conversation-wise.
yeah, and I think one of the things they're saying is, well, how they need to expand the academy into amateur scene. And one of the things which this kind of sparked in my head, and I was kind of thinking, well, how is this relevant? How do I think about this? Is that if those of you who watched OGN back in 2014 might remember a tournament called the Masters, and I think it was the NLB Masters, I think it was. And
Great,
that's where you had. So this was a fantastic format where you had organizations competing with sister teams. So you'd have SK Telecom T1S and T1K competing as one unit effectively versus the other organizations. And what you would do is you'd play a best of three between two organizations, where you would play your A team, your B team. And then at the end of it, the winner of you still play the third match, even if it's a 2-0, just for match for match requirements and stuff like that. I don't know. There was a points thingy, and you effectively would play either the winning two teams, or basically the losing side, if they've gone to 0-2 at that point, get to choose just one of their squads to play again, effectively. And what this would mean is effectively that you get the ability to bring in a B team of players which do still need that talent, that talent kind of forged, right, and have that higher level of competition brought to them. But you also get to do that on a stage which is going to have more viewers because you have the main team playing alongside you. But it also means that also for these big teams, you get to have a bigger squad. And if you remove the import rule or relax and instead of like three players on one team, maybe it's like, I don't know, like 5 players between your two squads which have to be resident or something like that. I think that ends up going towards that same direction which Jack wants in terms of making a more comprehensive amateur scene. But the problem for these big orgs is that they've tried so hard in a lot of senses to buff up their academy rosters and try and give themselves a good start on the scene, and it's just not really led to anything, and it's continuing to like go around in this cycle of suck, as the Golden Guardians team owner was saying. It's like, yeah, I mean, at a certain point it just sucks to be a part of.
I think, honestly, that's a big issue because there is no big tournament for a lot of these academy guys. Like, they don't have that EU
amateur,
Masters, right?
That's a massive deal. Yeah.
Hilariously, and this was the first year that we didn't see the T1 Invitational. Like, that was actually a big deal in the amateur scene because everyone was like, it was the biggest part of American amateur tournaments, and it didn't happen due to obviously unprecedented events that ended up happening, and obviously there were big plans for it at the end of the 2019's one that it went off with a bang. They were planning to do it in studio, in-house. They're going to have a center, people are going to be able to view it. Obviously all those plans had to get cancelled, and I think that's why it's been pushed off. But yeah, that's a big thing, right? NA doesn't have, and I can see that being a problem. But why then, and I want to move us over a little bit, why then is the conversation only happening in NA, gentlemen? Why is this not a wider world conversation?
Yeah, and go on.
I think specifically, partly this is because a lot of other regions, particularly the major ones, are quite happy having the import rules in place. EU has been in a really sucky spot for a long time where they can't for the same money as NA, and so all of their players, all of the best ones, keep moving to NA. Bjergsen went, Santorin's gone, Perks is gone, Alfari is gone, Jensen is gone, and the list keeps going. Sven is gone, Mithy's over there as a coach, like Ignar left as Power of Evil, Jizuke, EU midsman, and like that has been really bad for EU. The LCK are saying, yeah, fantastic. We can't offer the same money as the LPL and NA. We get to keep all our best players and keep being the best. Like, we are the most talented. We got the most talented servers, the most talented regions. No team has won without having at least in recent years, without having at least 1 or 2 Koreans on the roster.
No, ever since season 3, the solo laners of the world's winning team are Korean.
And like they would love to keep the likes of Rookie and the Shy a little bit more easily rather than losing them to the LPL in particular these days. And the LPL, well, they have got a lot of talent and there is a lot of regional pride there. They would like Chinese rosters and Chinese players to win and to not have loads of orgs just buy into the Korean system, because that's really aggravating for them too, because it's like they've got Uzis and Hwanfangs and all these other guys who are coming in are really good, and they don't want necessarily to constantly be relying on Korean solo laners, however good they may be.
But then if you're kind of in that spot, then why is this conversation only happening around NA? Like that's the big question, because like everyone keeps going back, it's only an NA thing, only NA. what happens if something big does occur? Like the rule gets changed and the other owners in other regions suddenly are told, hey, either NA owners now have the ability to buy from anybody, meaning the cost to enter into NA is significantly lower because anybody can play in this region. Meaning if you are a scrappy little young player and you're looking for your opportunity on the big stage, NA suddenly looks really appealing. And now you might see Korean or Chinese teams, especially in Academy, might subside a little bit because they might not get that next Chovy, because Chovy isn't going to go through the Academy system over in Korea. They're now going to go over to America because they can immediately play for a tier 1 org, get paid pretty decent salary, probably far better than they would in Academy, and they get there 1 or 2 years to prove themselves. Like, what? That's just going to change everything.
Yeah, I mean, that's the argument, right? Is, you know, the LCS have wanted this done, and the other regions potentially don't. I know Carlos has been tweeting out about it, saying, yo, why are we not involved in this conversation? I quite like the way things are if they do. I know, obviously, way back when this conversation first came up, and I know, obviously, it was brought up by Travis on Hotline League. He had Raz on as a guest, and they were basically, I know Raz and Mark Z were both saying, like, well, can LCS do this unilaterally? Why is this not being done in discussion with the other regions? And if they do undo the rule, then for competitive integrity of the entire world, you know, do they not need to remove the import cap globally to make things fair? Or is that actually, is that the competitive integrity edge there being kind of removed?
And then the thing is that, well, okay, so if then the argument against that is LCS is going to be a global league, well, then you need to start doing away franchising, because you can't have 10 American orgs owning all 10 spots of a global league, and that's a whole other thing. And again, we want to think about this more from the LJL perspective, in terms of, okay, well, if things change outside the outside the LCS, how does that affect things based on how that import rule changes?
I'll be honest, if the global import rule changes for the NA, for the world, I think that's why I think the hot take is LJL dies in 2 years. I just don't see it being needed in its current state. Now, that doesn't mean that the region dies in 2 years. It means the region has to see a huge adjustment and change. I could easily see a system where the LJL becomes part of a system where, hey, you join the LJL, you still get into some form of tournament where you then get to play in Worlds, but there is an extra step to get into Worlds, right?
So this is what OCE is going to have. But so the problem is that effectively OCE is now in a spot. It's now in a real spot bother because they just had Legacy do pretty well in play-ins. Actually, they got to a point where they were one game away from groups yet again. And now they're going to be in a point where they don't have a regular league where their top players can practice all year round. Now, there have been a choice couple of teams which have done better outside of a league setting, a league format in history, which is Gambit. Gambit Moscow 5 didn't really do well in the league setting, but if you had them in an open circuit, they'd have time to basically boot camp, turn up to an event, and just absolutely crap on people. Now, I look at the LJL, and this is a region which has honestly just built as the year goes on, as you do. I think that these teams will just end up improving a lot from that. I think that if you end up like dismantling the LJL and saying, okay, you have an open qualifier and you can qualify from the Japanese region, but you don't have a league, I think that ends up really hurting both like the influx of of Japanese players coming out of that region. We've just had some really good rookies come through.
Yeah.
And then also, like, I don't think I think the quality of teams is going to go down. And I think that we've struggled to show a top quality team for a while at an international event, but I think we're getting close. I think V3 were pretty close. I think having rookies at Worlds sucked for them, but I think that actually they had a lot of things they could have built on. I think this current DFM roster, the one which will eventually have Gang on it, could actually end up getting to groups. I think that's the one which could make it from the LJL, and it would completely suck that after this year, they're like, LJL's gone. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
At least we got to groups once, though. At least we get to say that.
If we get to say that, you know what, we're happy. Experiment succeeded.
I mean,
yeah. I mean, the thing is, removing the import rule hurts Japanese talent more so than it would in NA, because NA actually has an academy scene which is being worked on and is slowly getting somewhere. And they've got a good collegiate system. The academy system has definitely got its flaws, but the collegiate system in NA is actually pretty good, honestly.
I've cast for a collegiate tournament once or twice, a little bit.
Yeah,
Lower
exactly.
levels of it, but it's pretty fun.
Yeah, exactly. And the point is, they have got some stuff there. The Japanese amateur scene there's nothing, like, it's a wasteland for most of the year at the minute.
Yeah, it doesn't really exist. There's normally 2 to 3 tournaments. Pre-COVID, there was a few more in the works, but since COVID hit, it took 6 months for us to eventually start seeing 2 tournaments. We then got 3 tournaments back to back to back, and now it's radio silent. And one of those tournaments was Scouting Grounds, so it's not really one that anybody can enter with a ragtag group, which. Yeah, I mean, it's just a kind of a weird spot for Japanese league and amateurs, and to see anyone, and that's why I keep getting on that soapbox.
Yeah.
I think one of
sorry, just to finish up where I was going with this before I drop it a little bit, is that yes, okay, so academy scene's not in a great space in the LJL, worse so than NA. If you remove the import rule, then the squads, the teams with money, and that you have to understand that some of these LJL organizations have got money. Sengoku Gaming has money. The Hawks have a ridiculous amount of money. Like the SoftBank, the team that own this, is one of the biggest companies in the world. Like they are huge. Like there is money in the LJL. And what will happen is that a lot of these squads will throw money at Korean players to get them in. DFM have kind of done that already.
Sure,
they've got Aria.
But then you run into like the Arsenal in the Premier League problem, right? Where technically they have money, but actually they're not willing to spend it because of various fiscal responsibilities that that subset of the organization has, right? So you can say that SoftBank has a huge amount of money. Well, how much can they actually commit to it, right? That's the problem.
And that's just it.
Well, I mean, if an import rule goes away, like they might be like, "Hey, now we can throw it all, and in theory, we'll get the best players."
Exactly, that's my point.
Yeah. In some ways, actually, I think actually, if the import rule is removed completely, Japan could actually be importing full teams of Korean challengers and the LDL squads. I think that actually the LJL could be hit worst by this. Actually, we already have teams with 2+ Korean imports. We've got. I think there's the Hawks have got.
You could import a full Vietnamese team for less money,
I mean,
and you could get like a top 2 Vietnamese team for less money than what probably Axis is paying at the moment. And that's just, you go on salaries just point blank.
Yeah, and I mean, like you look at like the Hawks, and they've got one. So Corporal is an OCE dual citizen holder. So like they are a Japanese resident. They are a Japanese resident. You've got Tussle, who's naturalized Korean resident. So they are so now they're a resident of Japan. You've got Dasher and Zenit, which are also Koreans. Then you've got DFM, which are heading towards having 3 imports because they're going to get Gang into their roster after Steel becomes naturalized too. And like you look at this and you think, all right, okay, you're really not getting the situation in EU and NA where you have teams which can compete with these teams which are largely or completely national residents.
Yeah. And like, so I will say this, and I do think this is important to say, I have no problem. I actually think that having a system in place to allow imports to become residents is a good thing, and I think
I agree.
It's something
Absolutely
agree. But like, so I've done a fair amount of research, and I wrote a fairly long article on this couple of weeks back, and obviously there's been more change. There's been a few, but one of the things I was discussing was like, and obviously Santorin has said something very similar at this point as well, that actually there is something about players moving to a region and then buying into the system and spending enough time there to build a fan base, show some willingness to compete and represent this region. Bjergsen made his name in NA. The NA players, or the NA fan base and LCS, know him as one of theirs, really. Jensen as well had his career made in the LCS. Yes, he is Danish, but his entire time has been building a thing building a name for himself and an attachment to the LCS. Dornby, Rookie, Rookie's a little lesser, but he's kind of bought into it. He's married out there and stuff as well.
We already have a player in the LJL, like you're describing, who's already doing exactly this and brought in during Worlds more than ever before. Aria is definitely trying to become the darling child of the LJL. If something like the region, if the import rule changes, our hope for keeping him diminishes drastically, because there is no way, if an import rule goes, that none of the NA teams that are doing good scouting, by the way, good scouting, it is important to mention that they don't just look at someone like him and go, holy crap, he was part of CGA and almost got them all the way there, and they were a garbage team.
Yeah.
And then they go on DFM and they just slap everybody? Like, what?
So I think DFM don't pay awfully, right? They're the team which is most likely to pay well in the LJL given
They have
given
the
the
best
tenure.
salaries outside of what Sengoku was doing apparently last
I'd imagine
year.
so. I mean, obviously, I don't have the best. Again,
And
like,
that was only two players
and again,
on
we
Sengoku.
don't have contact with the teams themselves. A lot of our information is passed down the line several times and whatever. But like, out of the people that you could like import from PCS, VCS, CB LOL, LLA, like all of the minor regions put together in the LGL, I think Ari is top 5 in terms of people that you want to import.
Probably is actually.
I think he's actually top 5
out there.
because
I think hilariously.
particularly after you consider that when he's come into this split and showed another facet of play, and effectively Ari can play out whatever the hell he wants. He's top 100 Korean challenger whenever he's trying effectively. He's gonna get snapped up. He will do if someone throws a big enough paycheck. I appreciate the fact that he stayed around the LGL so far. I don't know whether he got offers from LCK or challenger teams out there too, but yeah, if you remove the import rule and suddenly it's a Wild West across the board, I look at it and think, all right, there's a good chance he gets snapped up, and that also again diminishes a lot of the LGL's like bargaining power on the international stage, because again it means that suddenly, whereas like what you've got 5 major regions, all of which with like 10 teams, so 5 times 10, that's 50, each of which with 2 resident slots in them. So there are 100 imports across the world. I don't know, like say 150 imports worldwide import slots that you have to be competing for. Suddenly that you go up 2.5 from that, and you've got 400 effectively slots which are now open instead of that 150, and you think, all right, okay. Suddenly that adds open a lot of Wild West factor where you're thinking, okay, things get a bit rough around the edges there.
Yeah. I mean, what I will say is that I wonder whether, well, 2 things. Obviously, I think, one, you just end up with a lot of Korean imports in the LJL, and they won't be necessarily good Korean imports, and you cut off the Japanese talent pool. The second thing I wonder is, actually, do we end up with a bit of a global bidding war where basically, because you can import
Korean
everybody, you end up with a big Korean exodus and a lot of people bidding over the same ones, which drives global salaries way up, potentially. And actually, can my regions even think to compete with that?
I actually have a complete counterpoint to all of this. I think actually it just improves the value that comes out of the minor regions. I think minor regions suddenly could, in that scenario, get put on a pedestal. Because in theory, if you can prove yourself in a minor region, right? So but I almost wonder, do NA teams in that scenario just go, who's the best team in the minor regions, just in your team, and they go DFM.
Import Gum to NA. They'd probably come top 3 or 4.
Right? Easy. You import DFM, probably a similar story. Import either Infinity or PSG Talon from 2 different regions, and it's like suddenly it's like hugely done. I think we've just lost Initia1ise, but he has returned back to us. Hello, sir.
I think my internet died quite briefly, so I had to refresh, which does mean I think, unfortunately, that means to move some cameras around.
No, it's fine. We're good. I don't do that anymore. We don't have random camera jigging, which is very fortunate
that's
for me.
good. I'm glad to
no
hear
longer
that.
Discord capture, so that's saved there. But I do wonder what happens in that spot. Like minor regions in the future, their talent might be fine for the first little bit. But if full teams or like if the level of play in minor regions in the short term, it'll be great. Suddenly there's an influx, and then in the long term, I actually worry that we actually won't get those Japanese we won't get those Korean imports into Japan anymore, Lights. I actually think we're going to have to see all Japanese teams, because it's the only way we'll have the player numbers to justify it, unless people are willing to take a huge salary cut, and that's when you start dipping into like VCS talent and the like, right?
Yeah. Or you start getting bargain bucket players is the other option, where you get players who won't go anywhere else.
Yeah. And I mean, and then of course, like the other outcome that we haven't really talked about yet, because we've talked about, okay, so we've basically said, so there are a couple things which can happen. Either you no longer have grandfathered residents, and that means that suddenly actually rules are tightened across the board. That really affects the LGL, which had a lot of long-term Korean residents, and I think that's an important thing, as we've been saying. I'm not sure that'll be good. It's not good for the LGL, I don't think, in its current format, because I think a lot of the most loved players are now becoming residents. And that's like, and then you've got, okay, what happens if the import rule is removed or relaxed? Yeah, okay, we're definitely going to see a lot more Korean players kind of chilling out in Japan for a little while, because we've seen that with, we saw Blank and Pyrian and a couple of wild, and they did really well, right? It's not like they're just chilling, but there are a lot of players which move over to the LJL in hopes of greener pastures, and then you've got
Blank's just done that.
Exactly, and then you've got the extra two options, which are effectively something affecting the regional leagues, the minor region structure in totality. You either have the least well-performing or least monetarily well-performing regions disbanded. We've seen that with OCE. They just couldn't hold things together after a while. LJL is probably not that far up the pecking order on that. You've probably got one or two regions which are not really got the player, the server size or the viewership numbers and stuff like that to really pull their weight. And I don't think the LJL does awfully in terms of viewership. Like when it come finals, they get up to almost up to 100,000 viewers. I think they had like 70,000 for the last final, something like that.
Yeah, it was decent numbers.
It's decent, but things is that enough to kind of reassure Riot HQ and say, actually, this region is worth supporting? Because it could be the point where all minor regions are disbanded. And you just think, all right, let's just make every league a global league, and then people can start like culminating towards their closest one, and we'll just see like these minor players try and make it in through a wildcard kind of entry tournament, an open qualifier event for the major events. And I look at this and I think LGL would have then effectively just become DFM of trying to apply for different tournaments. Like
Exactly.
That's it.
But at that point, you have to ask the question: well, why on earth have a regional system at all? At that point, just have.
Would you have an open
circuit
circuit between?
Would you have an open circuit? Exactly.
Would you have like the major leagues and then an open circuit for the remaining teams worldwide? How would that work?
Yeah. And bluntly, the last time regions were unlocked big time is Overwatch kind of was in a weird position with it, and Overwatch basically had like
when you had
a
Contenders and Apex League.
Yeah, exactly, and you had like mostly Korean teams plus like one or two North American ones. That was it, and I didn't really follow it that much. Like even the London Spitfire, which was effectively a Korean team, like that kind of deal.
It was a Korean team owned by an American company that happened to be held in London. Like, it was the most stupid thing in the world.
But to add on top of that is you actually did have, obviously if you look at StarCraft, right, they were unlocked regions forever, and basically every region was just full of Korean players. And don't get me wrong, they were good, competitive Korean players, but it killed the game. Like it put a glass ceiling in place that basically said if you are not from this region, you cannot get onto the competitive circuit, and it narrowed the only place where you could ever hope to become a competitive player in another region was if you were coming from Korea. Everything else, there was no way for you to get up.
And this is a huge problem. So in traditional sports, because I mean, probably the sport which I'm most familiar with is rugby, right? I look at rugby and. There is a huge problem in Europe where the Six Nations happens, and all the other tier 2 nations within Europe have no way into the Six Nations. Even though Italy is a team which has, I think they've won like they went winless for like 4 years in a row, 4 going on 5. They
winless. They couldn't win a game for 4 or 5 years.
Yes, exactly. Because they're that. Because I mean, in fairness, like you look at the home nations of England, Ireland, Wales, Scotland, then you got France involved. And France are actually a world contending team too. And then you've just got Italy chucked in there. When Italy were like added in and into the 5 nations, which became the 6 nations, they were a team which could actually contend with a couple of these teams and take draws, take wins or whatever. Particularly when Scotland was struggling. Heck, they even they held Wales to a draw at Millennium Stadium back in like 2010 or something like that. That was a dark day, I tell you, as a Welsh rugby fan. But like I look at this and suddenly you've got teams like Romania and Russia and
Georgia.
Spain's more like rugby league, I suppose. But like you got these teams which have no way in, and you think, well. This talent is capped, there's a glass ceiling, even though it's good for the franchise and for the viewership in a lot of ways because of the pedigree and the amount of years that this tournament has gone on for, there is a huge amount of that population which is suddenly just like completely left out to dry, really.
And is that going to happen for the LJL?
That's the thing. That's what I'm worried about. Because you look at this and there's no way for these players to then compete on the international stage. And that's something which I think Riot would desperately hate to see happen, where you have this, because I think the dream of Riot and in League Esports is that anyone from anywhere can get to a point where they can compete. And it feels like you are just completely neutering that if you take away minor regions without putting something in place in. And I say taking away minor regions. This is off the assumption that changing the global import rule destabilizes the global circuit. And there is a chance that happens in some form or other. There's a chance it only partially happens. But for the partial part where that does happen, it does mean that you've got various swathes of the world which then don't have access to the international tournaments now.
Yeah. If you don't mind me adding a little more context on the StarCraft front as well, just because I'm aware a lot of our viewers and listeners are likely not, are coming in from a league perspective and may not know that much about StarCraft. they did eventually put in an import rule of sorts, and it was only after that that it was only ever after that we saw anybody rise to the point where they could challenge the best of the best, could eventually take off the crown. I mean, the most important one of that
that's how Scarlet came up, right?
Yeah, and Serral, particularly from Finland, is the best player in the world over the last few years. He's from Finland, and the only reason he's ever been able to come up and compete with these top Korean players, like Flash, Boxer, whoever else is playing. I'm not even sure who's playing at the minute anymore. But the point being that
not gonna lie, I don't know StarCraft that well anymore.
Exactly, and part of the deal is and part of the reason is they killed their viewership by dropping off other regions who then weren't really. It was just an extended Korean region, which was fine if you like competitive play. Like, these were some of the best players in the world, but it never gave any chance for there to be any other best players in the world. And you end up, ironically, narrowing the competitive pool. And Serral came out of this and has been kind of monstrous since. So this guy, when has he? He's been. When did he last win?
So
he won in 2020. He's the last winner, I think.
Okay. So obviously, at the end of this part, as we are going to have to wrap up this conversation, gentlemen, I think we're pretty off the idea of the import rule changing. For each of us, obviously, we do think there's going to be different degrees, and we have our own personal opinions on this. Obviously, I'm of the opinion that it is a death wish. It is a death wish that if it happened to the LJL,
at least for the LJL, minor regions as a whole, we don't know, but the LJL, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, and it might be that the fact of either a minor region has to be looked at and go, okay, you either now get to auto qualify or auto find a way into EU. For instance, if you're like the CIS over in Russia, there's a way to get into that system. LLA, maybe they also connect with NA, but then where does Turkey go? I guess they go EU as well, and LJL just becomes a minor region for Korea. Like, do we just try and slot all these things in? None of this seems clean, and that's what definitely worries me about the communication that we are getting from Riot, because they're not releasing anything, and the owners have no right to say anything to the public. So it very much puts the future of League in a precarious spot. And where will it be in 4 or 5 years, where broadcasting rights and everything and contracts that have been signed no longer exist, and it's in a new world, as it would be? Where are we sitting? And honestly, it doesn't look good for the LJL if things change from our perspective.
There are going to be repercussions if it changes, either way.
Yeah.
There's a chance it leads to the American dream for a couple of our top players. I mean, we talked, heck, even the last episode we just released, and it's like, well, which of these players can theoretically end up becoming the next import? And there are a couple which might be up there, right? And we know that some of the coaches have watched even our content. So if you're around, hello, come getting content. We like you.
Hello.
Yeah, I mean, it does give that American dream kind of option to a couple of players, but overall, it means that you're killing off the region, and LJL is already kind of. I mean, you can say, well, what if it's barely hanging in there and can't sustain itself? It's not helping it either way. It removes the eventuality that it could end up supporting itself, which is a problem.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know whether we've kind of got onto this point much already, but I mean, there is, I suppose, a world where minor regions are just the ones that don't have free imports wherever, and that maybe makes things a little bit more interesting, because at the moment, like, it's...
I still think it has the same problem for the LJL.
Yeah, I mean, actually, it definitely does. But it's one of those things where, like, if you want to be a true world's contender as the scene stands at the minute, as a player, not necessarily as a region, I put this out there is a world where actually, if you want to get your name to be a little bit more valuable than, say, if you are to try and compete with some of these top Korean, top EU imports in particular, then not counting as an import makes you that little bit more desirable, right? It's and I could see that actually that might be something for, like, say, later on. It's like, hey, Ebby or Utapon suddenly look at this and go, I could get that spot on FlyQuest. I could show some of these guys up. Or you look at at EU and you say Vitality, so we'll spend a bit of money.
Right, huh?
I could see that. Yeah, right, exactly.
I mean, but that does open the question of why has there never been a Japanese player that has ever gone across the pond, as it would be, or to a major region. We only ever see occasionally prospects that come into the LJL leave, and normally they are Korean players.
Yeah.
Obviously, we haven't seen a player that started in the LJL make it out. Now, Boogie might be that very weird caveat where he got his start in LJL. He then went away, came back, made his Worlds debut, not international, Worlds debut, and now is definitely fighting to be the next Jose Diodo, literally going through the LLA, hoping to go to Worlds, and then obviously from there get picked up by the by an LCS team. Obviously his rank 1 account on NA server is LCS is my dream or something like
he just
that.
got overtaken by Core JJ, which is kind of sad for him.
Just about.
Wow.
He's still like top 5. He hit top 1. I mean, yeah. I will say part of it is actually visibility, right? Think of the players that from minor regions that get over to other places. It is because you have proved yourself somewhere where people have spotted you.
Scouting. And that's just like, that should be what the players and the teams are doing, right, in-house.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's like Levy performs well on the international stage. His value skyrockets. Suddenly he gets moved over. Broken Blade gets over from having played in Turkey for a while. Armor moving over to the Mad Lions. Like, the reason a lot of these players do end up Jose Dioto, I suppose, is obviously the other more recent one. It's because these people were spotted on the international stage and played well. And especially if you're from a minor region, because otherwise, why don't you consider one of these Korean gods from, I don't know, like, hey, they just didn't perform well on KT. I'm sure they'll be great for us. Like, you've got to find a way to prove yourself and be spotted, and visibility is such a hard thing if you're a minor region player.
Yeah, it is. It is, absolutely. Nymaera, any other closing thoughts from yourself?
I think we've kind of covered everything a little bit to death now. I just feel like, so I think at the end of the day, we've covered a couple of options, and there is every chance that nothing happens. There's kind of just kind of smoke and mirrors and all the rest of it. I think it's almost inevitable that if the import rule is relaxed worldwide, it destabilizes pretty much all of the minor regions. I think VCS gets away with it because they've only had they've never had imports really because of the way that Vietnam works in terms of applying for visas and stuff like that. I think that you're going to see it kind of cuts off that eventual pathway to having a truly global ecosystem, because what this does is it favors the major regions because they have an overabundance of talent, whereas the minor regions are trying to get that talent into their own region, right? I think it favors the major regions right now, and it kind of sets them up for success, and it kind of puts the minor regions kind of a couple of steps lower down on the rung, which they've been trying to climb up in the last couple of years, really.
It could help the VCS as well, because obviously if they are now becoming a major region powerhouse, as is PCS as well, maybe we're always thinking of this as realistically a 4 major region thing, when in actuality, realistically, if something like this happened, it's actually a 6 region thing, and maybe the LJL just gets kind of connected into a PCS, Korea half and half, maybe. Who really knows? But gentlemen, we're going to have to end this topic. We could probably go on for another hour if we wanted to, but we're not about the 1 hour to 2 hour podcast sections where we go into absolute insomniac kind of levels of non-stop going. Let's actually switch over to the very end of this podcast, which is question time. More questions have been sent in to us over through the Discord. We ask for them, you give them to us. If you ever come up with a thought off the top of your head, there is a slot over in our Discord where you can ask questions to us for the podcast specifically, or if you want to ask a question for the podcast, you can also DM us over on the LJL Twitter account, or by any other means really. If you can get in contact with us, we'll probably answer the question either immediately or on the podcast. Ishiki, hello Ishiki. They ask us, do you guys think the LJL could live without any imports, or does it really need imports? In their opinion, imports are a short-term band-aid. They hope that the LJL could have less imports in the future. So this is kind of tacking on to our subject around imports and obviously the import rule. Ishiki actually thinks that it would be better for the league if imports were less important. And do we think the LJL could live without imports? I'm of the opinion that yes, we could actually have a region without imports. It would probably actually breed pretty good Japanese talent in my eyes.
I think if you ripped out all the imports, then the league just collapses. I think it becomes a real crapshoot for a while.
I think, yeah, we have a year of shit, but then I think it actually breeds goodness in the long run.
Yeah, but I think that's more like in 3-4 years. I think that's 3 or 4 years it would do that, rather than like short term 1 year being crap and then second year being all right. I think that what the LJ could really do without is imports coming in for like a year then leaving. You need them really to stay for 2 to 3 years. That's what I'd like to see. I mean, Boogie, Archer, as much as I love them, I would have much preferred them sticking around, right? And because otherwise they're not really becoming part of the LJL. They're just using the LJL as like just a bit of a stint.
Well,
and that's
Boogie
why
had spent about 3 years of his career in total in the LJL, so I think that's Boogie.
Right.
Before he left to go away to Flash Wolves and everything, he had done about a year and a half in the academy system and everything. So I think it's totally fair to be like Boogie gets a pass.
Sure.
I think Archer's a fair one. I think Archer's very fair. And this isn't the first. Like, Pyrion and Blank came in for what? Blank a year and a half. Pyrion literally a year. Like, yeah, absolutely. I totally agree.
And that's part of the deal. Is like, actually, I think 2 things to say there. Is actually 3 to 4 years, if you're ruining the league for 3 to 4 years, is a long time. The league, like, League of Legends has only been going for what, 11 years? We're season 11 now. Like, that's nearly half. Nearly half of the whole time it's been alive.
But we've done 14. This is our 13th split so far, and the current system isn't breeding Japanese talent. I'm willing to try something that completely shakes it up.
So my point being that I think there is something actually, if you're going to you kind of want imports to stick around longer, at least that point, so it's not a constant revolving door, which I think is more harmful. But to do that, you need the LJL to be attractive enough to stay in, actually. And that's part of the problem with the minor region as well, is that actually success is first or dead, because you don't get to international tournaments at that point. I think it has helped that we are no longer just the top 3 teams going to playoffs, so there's more to compete for. That definitely helps.
Yep.
But 1 team going hurts us. 2, I think that we need a better underlying academy development system, because there is no way to... The reason we're relying on imports at the minute is there's not that much high-level Japanese talent to really fill out these rosters if you want to go to Worlds. And that is the big deal, right? Like, a lot of these teams are in it for success, and part of the reason the LCS owners are forcing the issue a little bit here over in the NA is because a lot of them are valuing short-term success, and there are a lot of rumors about that bubble popping for investors, and like, you need to prove some success to keep the investors in, and long-term development is harder to convince investors to get involved with.
To play devil's advocate, I'm all about the NA owners going, hey, we need that, and we are scared that the bubble is going to pop. Part of me does kind of want to see that bubble pop. I would be actually kind of morbidly interested in seeing what happens.
I mean, that'd be a real telling point of how sturdy the league ecosystem is, if you can survive that. But it's not something you particularly want to have to go through to prove.
No, but part of me is like, but what happens if we just open Pandora's box for just a moment, just to have a glance in? It's like, oh god, go the fuck back. Yeah, okay. Gentlemen, closing thoughts on this question. Do we need imports? Does the LJL need imports to survive? Can it work without imports? Is it a short-term thing?
To compete on the international stage for now, yeah, it does. Short-term, I think it does. Because I don't think I mean, like, what's the best all-Japanese lineup we could have right now? Let's have a look, see who's currently playing.
Ebby, Utapon.
Ebby and Utapon are definitely shoo-ins for that. Then you've
probably
got...
Syros comes back, right, in for the mid lane?
Gariaru, maybe.
Or Megumin?
Recap.
I think you need Syros. I think you need Syros. Maybe Ace. Syros or Ace, one of the two.
And Ace actually could be.
But then we saw Ace get slapped around on the international stage, right? So
first time on the international stage, so
sure, I agree with that. But like, we've kind of seen Ace like struggle in the early game and stuff like that.
We only have one Japanese jungler, so we have to go Hachimecha.
That's fine.
And probably NT. Reiner.
Like, I look at that and I'm like,
not bad.
Not bad. But then you compare that to like PCS, VCS, which field, full teams of residents and like have made it up to that point, or like LLA and stuff like that. I'm like, or Turkey. I'm kind of sat there thinking, yeah, you're probably looking like LJL if you field all national talent from each of these leagues. LJL's amongst the worst.
Yeah.
And part of that is because of the sunk cost into these imports. But So I think, what the LGL doesn't need is people coming in for just like a split or a year. That is, that's kind of hard to deal with. Like, if Cassin and Nation leave after this year, I'm like, guys, no.
So what we want to say is, if the import rule changes, we want to have an asterisk saying you have to play longer than a year in a region.
Yeah.
Do we want to kind of try and force players into a 2-year contract if they're signing with a minor region?
I think multiple-year contracts are better. They don't often exist in League, but I think they should exist more. I think that's been a big problem anyway.
Yeah. I mean, part of the deal as well, though, is you got to remember, like, who's actually choosing to leave? Is it the players or a team saying, yeah, we didn't see this year, you're gone? Because actually, players are often signed to multi-year contracts, but then are dropped after a year because they didn't get the success they wanted to. And so part of that's on the team.
Is it the narrative around them from broadcast, from Twitter, from Reddit? Can happen like that too.
True.
Each one is case by case. We know Boogie's one was different. We also know that we don't know why Blank and Pyrian both left. Obviously, Blank got an opportunity back in Korea, so it makes sense for him to take it, right? And Pyrian's just a free agent at the moment. Every player, we don't know what really happened with Art and Vivid, and that was obviously a big part of that. We eventually found out that obviously, I think Vivid is now doing military service, but like it took a while to find out, and we don't fully know what happens. I mean, like, who was the AD carry in spring for Axis? That's now completely dropped off. Hyde, right? A player that probably should have hung around a bit longer, but
I don't know. They weren't doing great.
Doesn't matter if they were doing great or not. It's the fact that they came in, weren't around for very long, and then went away. That's just another name you can kind of add to the list that we're trying to use to prove the point, which is distressing, honestly. But on a more uplifting message around an import, that if they came in, what would they do? PP God asked us, or the Pope rather of PP God, asked us what happens if the Lord and Savior himself of PP God was imported to the LJL. How would it shake up the league? Well, I think we'd now have a well and truly a very good rival to Reiner, specifically, and Gang.
I think that go on.
I think we're quite shy on actually really good support talent in some ways. Like we had a lot of good bot lane talent. We're like a little bit sad that Tori disappeared, really. But we've got Gang, Reiner, Vivid Nart gone as well. But like we've got who are the really, really top tier
Proud,
Reiner, Gang,
and Gang. That's my top
Corporal.
3.
And Proud's not performing that well. Corporal's not performing that well this split. Like so, we've got
Agreed.
2, one of which isn't even playing right now. NT's been playing okay.
So the thing which I will say is that it's my same reasoning for why don't we. Well, I would really love to see like a top aggressive Chinese Vietnamese jungler come in, or a top laner that plays split push, because putting in someone like PP God and supports are really key to this. They dive people in side lanes. The LGL doesn't do that. We don't end up blowing open early games and just like destroying the game at like 10 minutes by saying, okay, yeah, you just got like you just died for like the second or third time as a top laner under turret or a bot lane under turret. So importing someone like PP God who's very aggressive on those kind of playmaking champions, playing the Leona and whatever, and just been like, all right, have at it, is really important. It's why I said, like, I've said a couple of times, if Yoshino, who's fluent in Japanese, ever came into the LJL, it'd be really huge for the league, because suddenly it's not just the laning stats and just saying, oh, this guy can contend with Ebby and 1v1s and all this other stuff. It's saying, no, he just plays the map wider than the LJL is used to. And that's one thing which always hamstrings us at an international event, is that we don't play on side lanes particularly well, even in the early game. We don't end up punishing and be super aggressive in the early game. Having someone like PP God could help with that.
But let's back it up with our previous question's answer. If he comes to the LJL, he's stuck here for 2 years. He does not get out of jail.
That's huge, then. That's huge for the LJL, yeah.
Right? Like,
if you have someone sticking around for that long, it's huge, yeah.
Imagine knowing that when a player signs, imagine knowing Blank and Pyrian were probably going to be a combo for 2 years together.
Yeah.
Like, that suddenly brings in more international fans. Just because they're like, in general, wow, these guys are playing in the league. And honestly, Sengoku that year, in the spring at least, should have gone to MSI. They were fucking robbed because of current events. And I mean, I can't believe they even changed the patch that they were playing on between semifinals and finals. That makes me so mad. But regardless, gentlemen, one last question came to us from Little Maestro again. Hello, Little Maestro. Second question from you. Lovely to see you come back to us. They ask us, is Kanatu the best rookie in league history? Now, we're assuming they're meaning the LJL League's history. For obvious reasons why I don't think he's the world is because a player like Nate.
Yeah.
Yes. So we're going to assume LJL.
The shy.
Yes, the shy. I already know who my favorite rookie is coming to the LJL, historic wise, and that's Ramone. In his first ever debut, starting in the LJL, he showed up and played for Academy. Did pretty decently in Academy. Didn't win, but did all right. His first time playing, he gets first, goes to MSI, gets first, second time round, goes to Worlds. This is the kind of player that Ramone was in his first debut year in the LJL. He is the best Japanese rookie that we've seen really come
Japanese,
in.
yeah.
Especially in the LJL.
Yeah, Aria had a good debut too in 2019 spring. Like coming in
absolutely.
and coming in and kind of like being at the top of metric, like like being, I think, no lower than second or third for like KDA, kill participation, gold per minute, CS per minute, gold share, and like all this other stuff, right? Is a pretty impressive debut. But like coming in as Ramone and like just blowing open the league, he comes in. So he played on a couple of different teams, like the Crest Gaming Act and stuff like that back in 2016. But 27, so he won 2017 spring, 2017 summer. He won in 2018 spring. So that's like, yes, that would have been Rampage into Pentagram era. I mean, and part of that is he did have Ebby on his team, which is pretty huge. He had Ebby, Tussle, Uteromiasi, and Dara, who was also really good at that point too.
Really
like,
time, yeah.
In fairness,
not the caster.
In fairness, oh yeah, true. Love you, Dara. But like I look at that team, like okay, slotted into a really good team, and you think actually maybe the whole like Aria, formerly Luna, coming in and being on a slightly less good team and coming in and finishing first and second in the regular season and whatever at that point was pretty okay. But even then, it wasn't really the most competitive league. You had V3, DFM, and then CJ. They were the three teams which meant anything in 2019. We covered the summer finals. We did that as our very first practice casts. In fact, that's what we did. And the finals weren't there with CJ. They didn't actually make it in playoffs. But I think probably Ramone. It's probably Ramone.
Sadly, you can't really use any of the big names that you would normally go to. Ebby, he had a pretty rocky beginning, first start. Obviously, Siros and Yutapong absolutely came out the gates as the best and have been at the top for so long. You can't really go, well, their rookie career, they was like, well, they started when the league started and they were the best when the league started. So technically, best rookies historically in the LJL, but it's an awkward one, right? Like, you can't really count them.
Like, for me too, it's still Ramone. That said, I think Hinatu is having a great split, and he's been really, and like he's definitely up there. The fact we're having this conversation is quite telling. I'll also say I want to see a few more games. I want to see him take on Ebby, Cog, some of these other top lanes and beat them. Like he's already and there has been one or two games where he's kind of been left under the top. He's played all right from being in. He's played very well from being put in a bad position out of laning phase. Don't get me wrong. We've all been really impressed with his recovery play. Like
the fact that he can go 1-1 against Ebby and Rayfarki is huge for me.
Exactly. The fact that, or even if he's put behind, he's still smart enough to find a way back into the game is great news. And those are all talents that you don't necessarily expect from a rookie, which is why we're having this conversation. But he's got some big boots to fill, and while Ramone hasn't been that exciting this split, don't get me wrong, the pedigree is still there historically. So,
and I think for me at least, I'm going to be comparing results to a degree, and results-oriented thinking. I'm going to be comparing that directly to Archer, because Archer is the recent rookie who came out, looked really solid, and then went to the world stage. He looked really good, maybe the best member of B3. Like that is a rookie. Worlds, yeah, and that was a rookie that came in, never played professionally before, and started in the LJL, and then went the distance. They did what everybody would love to do.
Yeah,
right. So
Archer in Spring was a little more shaky. Like I remember, I remember like the DFM series in the Spring Plus where he kind of folded a little bit under the pressure. But
but that's the gold standard, right? And that's what Hinatu has got to try and see if he can match, even if he can't make it to an international stage. At least showing a very strong rookie performance, like making finals. Like I would be very happy if they at least made finals and looked like they're an important member of the team. But obviously that goes on to Little Maestro's second part of their question, asking, and I do this on purpose, ladies and gentlemen, related, can Rascal Jester beat Destination Focus Me this week? Well, we've already given our thoughts.
Yes.
No. Yeah, DFM, no. Can they make finals? Now, that's a very interesting question, gentlemen.
I think they will make finals if they manage to snag second. And that's why I think that it's very important to show that they can take some games against V3 DFM in the Super Week. It's a best of one. You've had a break to prep stuff. It'll be coming in on a new patch, presumably, too, because of the 2-week break as well. I think it was on 11.2 before things went down. I think it's on 11.3, I'd imagine, coming in.
I believe so,
which means that, like, you've got stuff like Olaf being nerfed and a couple of other things kind of being shifted around.
Sure.
I think they can. Will they? Hard to say. I think that the odds are slightly against them. Well, they are against them against DFM, but they have options to beat them. I think that they need
less Hatcher matches not in Elo hell anymore, lads. I'm so happy.
I think put it this way. I think if Rascal Jester beat V3 and have the 2-0 head-to-head over them and then also like and even up the game score with them going into the last week or whatever, depending on how the rest of the results go. Yeah, I think they can make finals. I think they can.
Yeah, and like that's part of it for me as well, is that effectively this is a crucible spot anyway, and it's all about how good is your preparation. And there's a lot of veterans on this team, which does help a little bit because you're a little bit more practiced about some of these harder situations. You've been there before. You've still got the rookie in the top lane, which could be difficult. It could be great because it could be time to break out some of those bad habits that you've been punished for before you come in really strong. But you're also looking at V3 and DFM, who have historically been really, really good at prepping for stuff. DFM in particular, really good at prepping for stuff. And they've still got the same coaching staff there. And it's 2 tough matchups as well. Like the Jesters have got a hard road with this one. It's DFM and V3, which are 2 of the toughest people you could face in the league, frankly. So can Rascal Jester beat DFM this week? Yes, they've got the talent. And especially if they've used the prep week well, then yes. I don't think it would be easy. I don't think it would... I still think statistically it's unlikely because they're going against a team that preps probably better than anybody else in the league.
But at the end of the day,
they've got the talent there.
Yeah, absolutely. They have the talent, they have the opportunity in there, but we will have to wait and see. I don't think they will make finals, ladies and gentlemen. I am already willing to put my hat there for our prediction episode, and we're still 3 weeks away from how I think it's going to go out. I think V3 should be in the at least gauntlet match. I expect at least DFM V3 gauntlet match because I want to see a double best of 5 versus these 2 teams. Oh,
that'd be great.
I just want there to be a second best team or like another top team in the LJL as opposed to everyone in the world going, well, DFM's the best. I want it to be like, well, there's DFM and V3. A boy can dream, ladies and gentlemen. A boy is allowed to dream. But dreams are something I'll have to wait for because, gentlemen, that is the end of our podcast. And with that, obviously, we'll have to say goodbye to our lovely listeners. But before you do all disappear from us, we must tell you, we will be casting live all of Super Week, 9 a.m. GMT. We will be casting the last 4 games live, and then we'll be doing a blast from the past, covering the first 4 games of the day. They will then be going up over on our YouTube channel, so expect a very active weekend from us over here at the LJLOU. From what I understand, we will be still having Seju Poro in the Discord answering and helping people out with any questions they have on the region and also doing translations when time is permitting them to do so. They'll be incredibly busy as they are all about the LJL. We're going to be having people in the background helping us. We're going to have some guest casters coming in to help us with lift all of that work. There'll always be one of us lovely 3 on the broadcast. But if you're interested in that, give our Twitch page a follow. Subscribe to us over on YouTube. Follow us each on social media at MaskedSwan. Oh no, wait, which screen are we on? 3 or up or down?
We're on the side to side.
Okay, so Initia1ise with a 1 in the middle and Nymaera over on the other end. Obviously, if you listen to the other podcast, you might know some other pronunciations of Nymaera if you were listening closely.
For God's sake.
That's the way you're supposed to pronounce it.
But with that all said, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of the podcast. We've covered a lot in this one. Super Week is almost upon us and the treacherous topic of the import rule. But with that all said, for myself, Initia1ise and Nymaera, thank you so much for listening and or watching, and we'll see you all very, very soon.
Call me Nymaera one more time.